Warning: this video will contain spoilers for Sonic Superstars. If you haven't played the game, or at the very least, watched someone else's playthrough of it, I recommend clicking away from this video until you do. If you've already experienced the game, or don't care about spoilers, let's get to it. Sonic Superstars is, to put it lightly, a mixed bag. A number of levels are interesting, and the Emerald powers are a welcome addition for the most part, but the game was clearly not built for multiplayer, at least locally, and the bosses can rot in a landfill. Don't even get me started on the final boss of the overall game, Black Dragon. This boss seemingly comes out of nowhere, and it's only fought in the game's last story. The first time a classic Sonic game does this. But believe it or not, Black Dragon was hinted at in the narrative beforehand, just not very well. There was also cross-media story prequel material made to promote Sonic Superstars. Not the first time Sega did this with new Sonic games, and one piece of material further elaborated on things about Black Dragon, at least enough to speculate about. So that's what we're going to do today. Taking a look at Sonic Superstars' story as a whole, and try and make sense of it. I doubt we'll succeed, but hey, at least we'll have fun in the process. As I stated earlier, Sonic Superstars had cross-media prequel material to help promote the game. An animated short called Trio of Trouble, and a comic called Fang's Big Break. Both of these feature the main villains establishing their presence on the North Star Islands. Timeline-wise, Fang's Big Break is first, so we'll begin our journey here. Eggman and Fang arrive at the North Star Islands to see if there's any treasure, and or something, or someone that can help the Doc take over the world. Oh, I'm sorry. Fang is heading down there to survey the islands, while Eggman safely chills out. Hey, Fang doesn't mind. Eggman's paying him to do this job. What I like about this beginning bit is that it establishes Fang's current alias as Fang the Hunter, while keeping his previous names Knack the Weasel and Fang the Sniper canon. He just doesn't use them anymore as a means to cover his tracks. Fang heads down to the island hoping to score some easy pay. And as soon as he arrives, he notices, or he thinks he notices, someone briefly watching him before scurrying off. Fang contacts Eggman about the island being inhabited, and Eggman sarcastically reminds him that he was hired to find this out. Fang grabs his pop gun and starts hunting. He's starting to regret taking this job, as he feels it's beneath him. He's taken on the likes of Sonic the Hedgehog in the past, probably during the events of Sonic Triple Trouble, which is why we see Sonic besting him in these panels, though Fang claims those losses were due to technical issues. Yeah, sure, keep telling yourself that, buddy. Things turn around for Fang when he spots some giant footprints on the ground. This reminds him of the time he tracked down the Master Emerald on 3 separate occasions, only to receive a Knuckles sandwich each time as a result. Yeah, as we can see here, Knuckles has been changing the location of the Master Emerald. Originally, it was in the Hidden Palace location from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, then a random jungle area on the island, and finally, the Master Emerald Shrine from the modern era, which by the way makes an appearance at the end of the game. If you've beaten the final Eggman boss as Knuckles, that is. Back to the story, Fang tracks the footprints to a giant bird, and learns the hard way that a giant would have the strength to potentially crush him. So he uses his smaller size to his advantage, hopping around the bird with his tail until it gets dizzy and falls down. He then summons his bike to finish capturing it with a net. That's when the individual who saw Fang arrive earlier shows up, ready to fight him. Though she's nervous about it. By now, we should know who this armored person is, but if somehow you don't, say hello to Trip the Sun Gazer, and witness her live up to her namesake. With Fang in complete control of the situation, he begins interrogating Trip, presumably about the North Star Islands and its secrets. Not only does this comic establish the dynamic between Fang and Trip right here, it also gives Fang a chance to have an actual win this time. As we've seen throughout the story, he hasn't had a good track record against the likes of Sonic and Knuckles. But against a giant bird and a clumsy native, Fang will take any win he can get. Plus, he does fulfill his job of finding someone that can help Eggman take over the world. While the comic ends here, the story continues in Trio of Trouble. which begins with Team Sonic confronting Fang, who has a Chaos Emerald. But the hunter learns the hard way why it's a bad idea to take on these four at the same time. He did previously state that he had a hard time with Sonic and Knuckles solo. Now factor in Tails, who can sabotage the Marvelous Queen by reversing the polarity, and then there's Amy and her dreaded hammer. The cherry on top? Amy, along with her friends, put on a nightmare face just before whacking Fang. And the term nightmare is appropriate because the opening sequence here is one Fang was just having. Whether the events actually happen or it's just a pure dream is up for debate. Anyway, we pick up on the North Star Islands plot with Trip leading Eggman and Fang through some ruins. No doubt Fang forced Trip to reveal the location of this place, then contacted Eggman to come on down. The two villains would then press Trip into their service. She reluctantly goes along with it because, let's face it, Eggman and Fang are big, strong bullies. The trio trek through the ruins, complete with booby traps, until they stumble upon a chamber containing a mural. Eggman naturally studies it, as he hopes to find something that can help him take over the world. During this, Fang is ambushed by a giant snake. While he's struggling with the creature, he discovers the battery to his bike is missing. It fell out while the group was evading the traps. Luckily for him, Trip recovered the part and tossed it towards him. Fang remembers his dream about how Tails reversing the polarity caused his bike to spin like crazy, and pulls the same trick here. This time it works out in his favor, as he easily hog-ties the giant snake. Eggman finishes taking his notes and shows them to Fang and Trip, and it turns out to be a crude drawing of a dragon. While he's momentarily stunned at the sight of a captured giant snake, he soon regains his focus as he's found something from the mural that can help him take over the world: the Black Dragon. Trio of Trouble continues Fang's winning streak that began in Fang's big break by taking down another giant animal, though with a little help this time. We also learn a little bit more about Trip. She appreciates nature and is generally saddened when something bad happens to either the plants or the animals. Now, based on her behavior with Fang during and after the conflict with the giant snake, it seems that Trip is a lonely and shy individual, which could mean that either 1, we have a Knuckles type situation in that she's the last of her kind, or 2, there are other sun gazers on the island, and Trip is either too shy to interact with them, or is considered an outcast. At the time of this writing, we don't know for certain. What we do know is that even though she was pressed into the villain's service, she wants to seek some sort of connection. Thankfully, she'll come across some much better company later on. In a brilliant bit of foreshadowing, a number of shots that show the trio Trouble have Trip enveloped in a bright light, while Fang and Eggman remain in the dark. I don't believe I need to explain further. Then there's Eggman discovering a mural, revealing a powerful creature sealed away, and he wants to free it so he can use it to take over the world. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? However, since we're still in the classic era, this is chronologically the first time Eggman does this sort of thing, as far as we know. But we do know for certain he'll do the same thing again, and again, and again. Let's take a closer look at the mural itself. In the center is an egg-like thing, later identified as the Black Onyx, with some menacing eyes inside. Presumably, it's Black Dragon. Surrounding the Onyx in a circular fashion are what appear to be 7 individuals wearing similar armor to Trip, indicating that they are also sun gazers. Each of them are a different color, the same colors as the Chaos Emeralds even, and if you look closer, there are colored symbols next to these individuals. Symbols that eerily resemble those of the Emerald powers from the game. I read somewhere that the reason the Emeralds have individual powers in Superstars is because of their presence on the North Star Islands. And as you can see here, the mural backs up this claim. This could explain why the Emerald powers don't make an appearance in games set in the future, which is a shame since I do like most of them. Anyway, from what I can gather, the 7 Sun Gazer warriors, assuming there are 7 instead of just 1, use the power of the Chaos Emeralds to seal away the Black Dragon within the Onyx. This also doubles as foreshadowing for what will happen in the last story, similar to how the Hidden Palace mural foreshadowed the final boss of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Then surrounding all of that are the giant animals and the giant snakes. My guess is to indicate that this island is inhabited by giant creatures. Odd that the giant snake is prominent in the mural. Well, it did show up in this animated short, as well as Sand Sanctuary Zone in the game itself. The setup for Sonic Superstars is complete, as Eggman would begin setting up shop on the North Star Islands, determined to find Black Dragon. The game's plot begins with Eggman's operations fully underway, as he's captured, with Fang's help, animals both small and large, presumably so they can be turned into badniks, and Fang is paid for his services. But Eggman's not done with him yet. He wants Fang to get him that Black Dragon, and Fang accepts. Trip is against the idea, and the hunter berates her. That's when the alarm goes off, letting Eggman know that Team Sonic is approaching the islands. We never find out how they knew about Eggman's operations. Maybe the animals have a relay system to let Sonic and company know of Eggman's shenanigans. Regardless, Team Sonic arrives and do what they do best. Smash badniks, free animals, and defeat whatever contraptions Eggman pilots, all while utilizing the individual powers of the Chaos Emeralds they're collecting. Eggman at one point tried to change his strategy by unleashing some prototype robots, but it doesn't work out for him. During all this, Fang tries to take on Team Sonic either directly or with some traps, but Trip's antics cause said traps to backfire on them. It gets a bit serious at Lagoon City as Trip winds up a victim of one of the traps and is left abandoned and in a broken mess. Luckily for her, Amy Rose comes across the Sun Gazer while exploring the area and helps her out. Afterwards, Amy and Trip part ways, but not before Amy gives her an apple as a gift. The conflict between Fang, Trip, and Team Sonic comes to a head at Golden Capital, where Fang manages to temporarily steal all 7 Chaos Emeralds from Team Sonic. By the way, the game will assume you have all the emeralds at this point. If not, it'll happily provide any unclaimed emeralds for story purposes. I bring this up because it happens at the end of Act Knuckles, where the Echidna comes across a chamber containing the mural. I don't know if it's supposed to be the same one from Trio of Trouble, or just a copy. But since the one Knuckles finds is in a more pristine location, I believe it's a copy. This, by the way, is the only in-game hint about the final boss. Sort of. There is one other blink and you'll miss it hint. In the level select screen between Bridge Island and Speed Jungle, you can see the black onyx in the background. So the setup is there, it's just not obvious. Back to the Fang conflict. After Team Sonic defeats him, Fang drops the emeralds. Trip, who's tired of Fang's crap, and sees Team Sonic as a better alternative, no doubt thanks to Amy, ditches her armor, uses the emeralds to transform into a golden dragon, and delivers the coup de grace on Fang's role in the main campaign. Afterwards, Amy properly introduces Trip to Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails. Despite being with a much healthier group, Trip is still a bit shy. They still have to deal with Eggman, so they journey to Frozen Base Zone in time to witness Eggman's Egg Fortress take off into space. Tails is able to modify some Eggmobiles so that the group can follow. After dealing with Eggman on the Egg Fortress, it begins collapsing. Tails manages to get an Eggmobile working, and everyone had to cram inside so they can escape. They make a brief stop to Angel Island to drop off Knuckles before heading back to the North Star Islands to celebrate. Sonic gives Trip his seal of approval, and Amy surrounds herself with all the freed animals. Later on in Trip's own story, she investigates why more badniks have popped up on the islands. Meta-wise, this is obviously her version of the Knuckles playthrough from Sonic 3, complete with Egg Robos taking over the Eggman bosses. Unlike that game, the final boss aboard the rebuilt Egg Fortress is not a different type of robot like, say, one of the prototypes, but Fang the Hunter. It makes sense story-wise because Fang is the first outsider she's encountered, has constantly treated her like dirt, and finally has had enough of the guy. They are now considered arch enemies, and what better way to conclude her tale is to give this guy one final butt whooping. Once that's done, Sonic and Tails arrive to give her praise. While this does lift Trip's spirits, she's still a bit shy. And now at long last, it's time for the last story, and it begins with Black Dragon emerging from a portal out of nowhere. I suppose the conflict between Team Sonic and Eggman caused a disturbance that allowed Black Dragon to break free from its imprisonment. It doesn't matter because Super Sonic, with the help of his friends, defeat the beast. Then Trip fulfills the same role her ancestors did, if I interpreted the mural correctly, and seal the dragon within the Onyx, thus ending the threat once and for all. And so concludes the story of Sonic Superstars. Sonic stories, while not a masterclass in literature, are enjoyable in some fashion if you understand what's going on. To me, Sonic Superstars hasn't quite reached that level at the time of this writing. I believe it stems from two issues. The first being the cross-media promotion with the comic and the animated short. Though it's not so much of a problem as people have easier access to the internet to find these things, and they're free. The actual problem is convenience. Not everyone interested in this game would know about Fang's big break and or Trio of Trouble, and would not fully get what's going on. This is not the only Sonic game guilty of this, as Sonic Frontiers also had cross-media prequel material. One of them showing how exactly Knuckles wound up on the Starfall Islands. An easy way to fix this problem is to put the material in the game itself under an extras option. That way, if people want to read/watch the game setup within the game itself, they can do so. Watch as there's going to be a Sonic Superstars Plus where it does this sort of thing. Then there's the second, and in my opinion, bigger issue as to why the story doesn't quite work. They're trying to tell a modern Sonic story within the confines of classic Sonic, and it doesn't mesh well. Classic Sonic storytelling, from what I can see, is a more visual medium. You see it play out based on the characters' interactions and what's happening in the background. Superstar succeeds on that front in spades. Where it falls apart is the incorporation of modern Sonic elements like a last story and a monster of the week. There needs to be a clearer indication of Eggman wanting the Black Dragon and or more cutscenes indicating the dragon's presence. What made a Monster of the Week work in previous Sonic games is setting up what kind of danger they represent. It does vary between games, but at least most of the setup is done in a way to make whatever monsters Sonic and Company face a big threat that didn't completely come out of nowhere. I'd even argue that the Bio-Lizard from Sonic Adventure 2, the one monster that did appear out of nowhere, had a bigger setup than the Black Dragon. Even factoring in the cross-media prequels, we practically know nothing about what the dragon did in the past that made Eggman interested in it in the first place. And we still don't know what caused it to appear at the beginning of the last story. The point is, if there's going to be more Monsters of the Week within classic Sonic, the setup needs to be better. Perhaps more murals at the end of a zone that tell a story in chronological order. Or get the background to change the more one progresses throughout the game. Just something a little more concrete. Though I will say, the best thing Superstars does story-wise is Trip's character development, going from a meek and reluctant helper of the villains to essentially coming out of her shell and becoming what is essentially the guardian of the North Star Islands, as well as getting an arch nemesis in the process. She even has a unique super form, which now has me thinking, was Black Dragon originally a Sun Gazer itself that wanted more power, and in a way succeeded? Could all Sun Gazers turn to dragons with the 7 Chaos Emeralds, or is Trip a unique case? Just more questions that may or may not be answered down the line. With regards to Trip, it wouldn't be the first time the Emeralds radically changed a being beyond a simple color and hairstyle, or would it be the other way around since now, Chaos would be further along in the timeline? Gotta love those new pre-adventure games. That's pretty much all I have to say about the story of Sonic Superstars. I hope we've all come away with it with a better understanding of what's going on. But then again, not everyone plays a Sonic game for the story. Though sometimes a halfway decent story would help alleviate some questionable gameplay decisions. Thank you all for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below. And if you want to see more of my content, please hit that subscribe button as well. And with that, have a good day everyone.